the meeting. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Does anyone of the public have something they'd like to say?
Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to say something.
I'm not seeing anyone. Is anyone else? Okay. Close the public comment period. Bob, the treasurer's report is next, and approval of expenditures.
All right, we had a brief finance meeting at 5 o'clock, and we reviewed the financial statements for March. Generally, because we were closed half of March, there was impact, and we're trying to get a sense of the impact of closing, and we think we can do that in a much more thorough manner next month with a full month of being closed. But we're very fortunate in early March to receive the tax levy, which essentially filled the coffers. And as we looked at our financial performance, our revenue was $581,222. The previous months were a deficit, so our net income this month was $469,806. When we take it year to date, our budget expected a net income of $283,170. And with that function in March, our present income is $298,069. So we're right in the ballpark. And what we're trying to do is begin to assess what the impact of closing will be going forward. And right now, we didn't see any reason for alarm, but we also, it's 2 weeks of a closing, and we need more information to make any solid judgments of what to do. But we're basically feeling positive about physical conditions as they are right now, and look forward to our next report. Are there any questions or comments on the income statements for ending in March 31st? All righty. And we could move on. We reviewed the expenditures, which we were budgeted for expenditures of $283,170. Our actual will be $298,069. Let me make sure I'm reading the correct thing. No, I'm not. 1 second, let me get to expenditure. The approval of expenditures, I'm sorry. April bills, the March bills to be paid in April are $29,771. It's about 20,000. Marie pointed out it's 20,000 less than the prior month, but it's mostly personnel costs. TGIF and the medical are more than half of that amount. The rest is payroll, etc. There are no unusual bills, and I think Paul is making an effort to begin to reduce ongoing expenses where they can be because of closure. But we need to recommend the payment of the bills to the board, and I would move that we accept the approval of expenses as they've been provided. And again, the total is $29,771.55.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Against? Abstained? Okay, it passed. The motion passes.
All right. The other thing that we did at the finance meeting is we reviewed a controller's annual report, which is a summary of our mainly fiscal operations for end of year 2019. This is an annual report that we do to the state controller. It's important because of the regulatory requirements and the controller's potential oversight for activities of public entities like ourselves. And it's a routine report. All of the figures in it were evolved from reports that we've seen, such as the closing statements for 2019. And it was very routine. There was no outliers or anything to make comment on, but it was just, it's a thorough report that Joy puts together every year. And the information in it compared 2018, it gives the 2018 data as well as the 2019 data. And what we could clearly see is that our close in 2019, we've done better fiscally than we did in 2018. So we're not assured. You're always vigilant about fiscal things, but we're more stable, or we're doing better at the financial statements are stronger, is a better way to say it. So we will submit that prior to May 1. Any questions about that report? It's also, Joy made them available. And that really ends my report, Marie.
Okay. Thank you. The next item is the consent agenda. Does anyone want to suggest that something gets removed? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Oh,
Thank you. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? None? Not any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is welcome to the department heads. Thank you all for coming. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And Paul, do you want to handle this section?
Yeah, we have department heads and some other staff members here. I asked them to attend the meeting to kind of give you an update on what we're doing and the kind of services that we're providing and working towards. So I open that to members of the staff to chime in and talk about what you're doing and what we plan to do and what we don't know what to do. So feel free to chime in.
I'm happy to go first.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. You know, I've been listening to the story hours and actually, the first thing I did on Hoopla was I had to test it out. So I downloaded Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. So
Very good. Okay.
it was fun.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Essentially, we're trying to do as much as we can that we did at the physical building. We're trying to do virtually. So we've got a whole ton of web content that we've been adding and that we're maintaining. We've got virtual programs. We've got storytime videos. We just put up a music video that Mike Gregg did for us. We're working on craft and science videos. And then we're also going to be doing readers advisory, recommending books, and then have those lists linked to Overdrive. We're working on something called S'mores. That's something Amy's working on, but it's basically like a virtual newsletter. So you could have like a Harry Potter title linked on Overdrive, and then you could have links to digital escape rooms or the British Museum, because they have a whole Harry Potter themed thing that they do. We've got online resources for all age groups. We've got over 30 items just for teens. Also, we're looking at school age kids. We've got pre-K links. And then we're, sharing information from other organizations that are providing content. We're also doing outreach to schools, which is to say that I'm emailing that information to the school librarians, which will get sent out to the students. And then we're also trying to plan for summer reading, which is a whole nother thing because we don't know what kind of programs we'll be doing, whether they're in person or if they're going to be virtual or a hybrid perhaps. So we're sort of planning 3 different summer reading programs, which is really very time consuming. And when we have time, we're looking at webinars. But that's pretty much what we're doing.
Now,
Thank
have you
Carol.
have you heard that the city had asked Massive Mesh to provide some hotspots because the schools were having difficulty with their students not having internet access? So
Yes, I know that that's a problem in Troy. It's
so yes, my understanding is that the deputy mayor reached out to Massive Mesh and they provided additional internet access so that the schools can work with the students.
yeah, and that's the other thing that, there's people that we aren't going to reach virtually. So I have some other ideas on maybe how we can do that. Maybe make some summer reading packets and distribute them to places like, the food pantry or places where those people would be most likely to have access. So.
I had a question, Carol.
Sure.
The total volume of public participation, has it slowed down tremendously? I didn't envision, I thought when we were closed, I wasn't sure that the public was still using the services, but obviously that's not the case.
No, we're getting, I wouldn't say we're getting more, but we're getting virtual, we're providing a virtual service. And so we're getting feedback on, things like you can measure on Overdrive or also on Facebook page, which is probably how we'll be mostly looking at statistics going forward.
Right.
So.
Well, I can jump in here with that as well. We do still get emails from people using our online resources. I am actively monitoring and maintaining patron accounts, especially with the influx of new registrations. As people are trying to access those resources and either don't have a library card or can't find their library card, or for whatever reason, I'm helping resolve those issues as they come up. My staff is spending a significant amount of time with webinars and trainings, mostly because we don't really get an opportunity to do that. So we're really taking advantage of that. However, I also spent all of last week working on a draft of a reopen plan for our department, which I shared with Paul. Obviously that's kind of skeleton now and we'll flush it up as we go, but when we reopen, circulation staff will be very critical, and it's important that we consider as many things now as we can.
Yeah, wonderful.
So does that include, the safety of the staff and the patrons?
Yes, both of those are the biggest concern really right now. How do we address those? What phases do we use? What sort of levels of service do we provide? How do we do that without exposing the staff unnecessarily, or to maintain social distancing for the patrons as well?
I had a question, if I could. How do you feel? Are you feeling settled? Are you, what does it feel like to have the library close and making these efforts to continue and prepare for the opening and continue services now? Are you, how's your esprit de corps and your comfort? I mean, so many things have changed for you. How are you holding up?
Thank you. Myself, my staff, we're really trying to stay connected, at least reaching out to each other once a week. That's, actively just for that purpose. We also are emailing, texting, checking in on each other with our own families. It's kind of surreal for us to be serving our people without our building, but we've been saying all along that the library isn't a building, it's the services that we provide. And I think this is really the time when you're seeing that, because we're trying to connect and remain in the view of our patrons. My staff spends a lot of time with patrons, and we miss them. We miss the people we talk to every day that stop in to see us. There's a lot of patrons that if we don't see in a couple of weeks, especially if we know they're elderly or vulnerable in some way, we might reach out to them personally to check on them. I did have a couple of patrons email the Troy Cirque just to say, hey, I'm okay. So that was really nice. Next week is National Library Week, so I've asked the staff to send me photos of them with signs that say we miss you, so I'm hoping to post those next week, either in video or just random photos. I've also reached out to some old staff as well, because it's, once you've worked at the Troy Public Library, whether it's the staff for a short period of time or others like June who retired after 20 plus years, you become part of that culture forever. So I have some former staff people that are also going to be submitting photos for that. It's just a testament to the way that the library culture is for us.
Good for you.
Who's next?
As far as adult programming goes, Stephanie can talk to some of it, but we have done a couple of virtual book group meetings. So we met both with the monthly book group for downtown Troy and the one in Lansingburg. I've reached out to the Shakespeare group, and it looks like they want to get on board with that, especially since programming probably will be the last thing that we add back in once we open, that this might go on virtually even after we open. So we're kind of trying to get that all in place so that people are used to it and comfortable with it without excluding people who don't have the technology or feel comfortable with it. So, and then Stephanie's been working on book recommendations and things like that on Facebook as well.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about that. We was planning a guided autobiographical writing program before the closure, and have decided to move it online. So that will be the first kind of digital program that I'm doing. And seeing how that goes, I'll be moving more programming online. Other things my staff has been working on, keeping up with answering the reference questions through our ref contact email. Some staff were in the middle of answering genealogical questions when we closed, and they've continued to keep in contact with the people who submitted those questions. Continued activities connected to our community arts grant, making sure the correct documents are being sent in to the Arts Center, and keeping in contact with the grant coordinator about changes that we're going to have to make to the programs, keeping the artists involved, updated on what's going on with the project, attending census committee meetings online, attending UHLS service meetings online to keep up to date about what other libraries are doing. Been planning our adult summer reading program. We've been keeping up with social media, responding to patron comments, sharing the live stream Q&A that the Rensselaer County Department of Health has been having daily, putting up census reminders. I created a library bingo game that patrons could play at home. We've been working on making different readers advisory videos, looking for other like local resources or online resources that can be added to the library website. Our ILL librarian has been continuing to request and renew ILLs for all outstanding items borrowed by Troy patrons. Been looking at different video creation platforms to try to learn how to make better videos. We've been continuing to order books, DVDs, and overdrive selections. One of my staff members has been creating a skeleton of an updated website, so hopefully our website can have a newer, sleeker, modern, more organized look eventually. And again, we've been taking advantage a lot of professional development webinars on different topics.
That's quite a list.
I've been kind of doing a little bit of everything, a little bit to lesser extent that other people have been doing. My staff has been doing webinars, like Carol said. Mike works at the Lansingburg Library, also works downtown. He did a music video. Hopefully he'll be doing more. Everybody's been doing professional development. I've been going down to the building to make sure that it's still standing and there's no leaks or anything that we need to worry about, turning down the heat. I've been trying to find funny things to post on Facebook for us, not necessarily library related, but hopefully make people laugh. And reaching out to the local schools to let them, remind them that we're here. I didn't make a list and now I'm not remembering what else I was going to mention, but I'm ordering books to some extent too.
Do we have any feel for people using the wireless at the two libraries?
I've seen people at Lansingburg.
The days that I've gone into the library down here, there's been people outside.
I did get the wireless stats for the end of March and they were pretty high, much higher than usual.
Oh.
Yeah, unfortunately with Lansingburg, we have to see them to be able to count them, but I have seen people when I've driven by or when I've stopped in, I look out the window and can see people using the Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm. That's good that it's available for them. I wasn't sure because of the social distancing, how much people would be out and availing themselves of the wireless.
I think people are out. I see quite a few people and I do see people using the Wi-Fi, but they are keeping their distance.
Yeah.
So there's no bunching up.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Anyone else wants to chime in? That's good. One of the things that we need to all work on going forward is a plan for reopening. As Virginia mentioned, circulation has been working on that. I might have the rest of the staff also work on it. There is a good plan that Albany has that we can use as a kind of a skeleton for our plan. In addition, through the Directors Association, there is a committee that was formed to study the reopening plan. And hopefully all the libraries will be able to coordinate to a certain extent so that we can reduce the confusion.
I know that.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
I just had a general question. Are there steps or actions that we as a board might do to be of any kind of assistance, or the administration ask for somebody to put some light on it, maybe have a reporter do a story about the ongoing activities that you're doing, or put a notice in the paper to enhance public awareness? Are there things that we could do to support your efforts?
Well, I think generally the board is supporting our efforts. I mean, you're meeting, you're concerned, you're following the financial situation. I mean, that's important. Any suggestions you have are fine, we can take them into account, and, if we have things that, we need to implement, we can certainly explore that. So we're always open to suggestions that people may have. We are sending out emails to people to advertise some of the services that we are offering. I don't know if everybody's on that list, but that's probably one of our biggest sources of advertising. We have a regular Troy Public Library page on Facebook, and that's where a lot of our activity is taking place.
What about people who don't have internet access and the tools to utilize digital media? Is there anything that we're able to do for them?
Tough question. I don't know at this point.
I thought I would ask it while we have all these people sitting around that could brainstorm it.
Brainstorm that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, if you don't have internet access one way or the other, yeah, it's really tough. I think one of the things I heard from one of the directors in a rural area of Albany County was that the school district was sending a bus around to various locations in the district with like a hotspots that people could just drive up and be near the bus, and you had, internet access. And this was done for students who didn't have internet access in this area. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. I'm not sure, what the answer is at this point.
I know we have an awful lot of card holders, but particularly if we know patrons who might be really isolated, even to give them a phone call, we could, look at those people who don't have email addresses, because I'm sure there's so many people out there. I know people who just aren't leaving their houses and, are getting depressed because they don't have access to more. So anyway, if anybody has any ideas about how we might be of service to folks that we can't reach digitally, that would be great.
It is tough to reach out to people with not digitally while maintaining social distancing. Something I've heard other libraries doing is mailing out seeds to patrons that they have addresses for as a happy spring thing.
And also giving them something to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice idea.
Anybody have any questions or? Paul, are we ready to move on to the next? Thank you,
Okay.
everybody, for
I
being
just
here
want
to
to also
keep us
say
informed.
You're welcome.
Okay, we've already done the New York State Controller's report. Bob, do we need more on that?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, so we can.
Awareness is going in. So.
And I see financial review is on here. I think, Paul, you were going to speak to that?
Yeah, I was going to address that. Basically, it's in my director's report as well. I think to get a background here, most people are now familiar with the fact that we do get two large payments from the city based on the 2 periods of time that the city collects taxes. For us, we see that money generally in March and again in September. In between the March payment, for example, and the September payment, on the average, we receive about $130,000 more. And so in figuring out where our position is, I wanted to get a hold of the city controller, Andy Piotrowski, and ask him whether there's going to be an impact on those funds, and basically in funds and, you know, tax funds in general. And at this point, he really is not making any predictions, nor is he proposing any figures. They're really not sure of the impact on tax collection. Obviously, some people are going to have problems paying their taxes. If they're not earning a living, they're not going to be able to pay their taxes. They're going to eat first. What percentage of people are in that position now? We don't know. They don't know. So I was, you know, concerned. And I think part of what he said will definitely impact our tax collection going forward, in that foreclosures have been postponed. And that amounts to some of the income that we would see, you know, between March and September. When I take a look at the figures and take a look at the expected expenditures going forward, I estimate that we would be okay between now and September without any additional payments. But it's really, really close. And so if my estimate is off, you know, then we've got an additional problem. But I don't really anticipate no additional tax payments between now and September. But I think it's something that I had considered. So I think what the conclusion is for me is going forward to be very conservative when it comes to expenditures, and to look at them and find out if there's any particular savings we can do. So that's about the best we can do at this point.
That's a very unpredictable situation.
Well, a lot of it, you know, depends. I mean, we just don't know when business is going to reopen. I mean, when this whole thing is the whole lockdown thing is going to be over. I mean, that's a big unknown. And that's what, you know, is also going to affect tax collection going forward.
But we did get the full March payment before the lockdown started.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Actually, it was interesting to see how close it was with the budgeted amount that we had predicted.
Right. We also don't know, you know, if this impact is going to show up in the second tax payment.
Any comments or questions? Thank you, Paul, for doing that. I know you've put a lot of thinking into it. Next is the director's report.
Okay, that was in the Dropbox. A couple of things. I spent the last 3 days or so in the library. The LED lighting project in the stacks is being completed, and it was really a good thing that we were able to do that when we were closed, because they just tear up everything. And it's a mess everywhere for the 3 days. But the lights are installed. They really make a huge difference. They're much brighter. You can read every label in every stack. And to me, it really changes the stacks. Before the lighting change, I think some people found them a little creepy. Right now, to me, they look inviting. I mean, there's a lot of light, and I think people will go in there and borrow more books that are in the stacks. The plans and specifications for the masonry projects on the north and the east walls have been completed. TAP would be able to bid this, bid specifications are done. They would be able to bid this project. How do I say? The DASNY project on the east wall doesn't involve a lot of contributions on our part. However, the project on the north wall does, to the tune of, well, I don't know yet, it hasn't been bid, but well over 100,000. The problem is, if we start that particular project, that will use up a significant amount of any kind of fund balance that we have. As you know, we don't, most of the money that we have available for a fund balance really goes into that construction account, or what we call a construction account. So it's something we're going to have to deal with going forward, I think. And we may have to hold off a little bit so that we can see, get a better idea of how finances are going to work out. I did file for an extension, so we have another year extension on that program.
On the DASNY?
No, that doesn't have a deadline. The other one does.
The construction?
The north
Funds.
wall, yeah. The public library construction grant.
Have you heard any feedback from your application for an extension?
What's that?
Did you get any feedback on your request for an extension?
No, usually you tell them where you are and they put it in the file. I don't expect any feedback on that.
Okay. If there's no financial reason to do the work immediately, then it certainly makes sense to hold off until we know that the finances are, in my personal opinion, to make sure that the finances are available before we go spending that cushion.
So Kirsten, is much happening now? Isn't most construction stopped right now?
It varies. There was a directive from the governor to stop non-essential construction work And then what is essential construction workers, there's some interpretation on that, and there are some processes for applying to be considered essential construction work. I know that the school construction is considered, all is considered essential work,
Mhm.
but I can't speak for other organizations.
I know that on the lighting project, that at first they weren't getting approval from the union to work on that project. And then a couple weeks later, the union said, okay, you can go in, and they did. So, but yeah, construction is a on again, off again sort of thing.
Is it correct that governmental
What's that?
associated construction is still considered essential? And since we're a special district library, that we might fall into that category? Even though we're not exactly a governmental agency, we're like an image
Well,
of.
yeah, I mean, you know, you can make a case for it. You can make a case for the fact that the bricks are falling out of the north wall, and then it's essential that we fix it. But, you know, I'm not worried about getting it started. I'm worried about spending the money right now.
Right.
In addition, I tried to get a hold of Daniela Chippo. I just haven't heard back from her. We did file our, the thing we had to file.
The resolution?
Yeah, at our March meeting. But I haven't heard back from them. So I will keep trying to contact them. Hoopla is now live, as maybe most of you know by now. People are exploring it. It really is, I think, a really great service for this particular time. So take a look, and our contribution to that, the Upper Hudson kind of led this whole thing. All the libraries now have it available. For 6 months, our contribution was $1,557, which comes out of essentially our materials budget. So that's not an extra add-on expense.
I didn't hear for what period of time that.
6 months.
6 months?
Yeah. It's something we were looking at anyway, before this whole thing happened, as something to add. I think East Greenbush had it, a couple other libraries had it already. But this is a great thing for us to take a look at. You know, it's a good opportunity. And I think it's going to be popular with people. We covered the staff, I think, pretty well. And also the grant application to the Preservation League of New York has been sent in. Marie had done all the work on that, and we thank you for your efforts.
Well, that's a slight exaggeration because you helped, Kirsten helped, and a lot of it was derived from Mark's work on the CFA. So,
Thank you for advancing
mine, but copied on. Anyway, a little bit of it sounded familiar, but I don't know. You put that together, and in a time when I didn't really have a lot of time to do that. That grant, by the way, is to support our historic structures report. So we're hoping for a little support from the Preservation League.
we'll see. I've never written a grant before, so I don't.
We'll see what happens.
I don't know how much we can count on it.
I think that's all I got.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is observations and community feedback. Does anyone have anything? If not, I'll share a couple of things I heard. We had one patron who was very, very excited to hear that we have Hoopla available. He asked for Canopy probably a couple of years ago. So he was really pleased that that's now being offered. And then I happened to be talking to a friend who just raved about being able to get audiobooks from the library and how much she loved being able to do that. So I said I would share that with everyone here. Any old, new business?
By the way, I know we use Zoom, but Upper Hudson has an extra license for GoToMeeting. So if we ever have a problem with Zoom, they are sharing that extra license with all the member libraries.
Speaking of which, are we working with making Zoom available for use by other organizations through the library, or are we're, you know, let's say there's a neighborhood group that wants to hold their meeting through remote capabilities, which of course they as a neighborhood group may not have. Is that something that they could?
I don't know, Joy, can we do that?
I mean, we have it restricted right now to Troy Public Library. We have one license that we use, and we might have to expand that and, you know, pay the extra if that is something that Paul wants to do.
I was just curious whether that was happening, just sort of similar to how groups use space in our physical building to hold meetings all the time.
Right. Some of the groups, if they are able to, Zoom is free for up to 40 minutes. So if they're, you know, if their meeting is not extremely long, they can sign up for a free account. And then they can end the meeting and start the meeting again if they need to go longer than 40 minutes.
Okay.
To add on to the GoToMeeting news, I'm not sure where this was at, but the adult literacy grant, which was going to pay for workshops throughout the year, those workshops were canceled. So there was some thought that money would go to member libraries being able to have a GoToMeeting account, and we could use those to potentially let patrons do job interviews online. I'm not sure where that is right now or how that would work. That's something.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. If we could offer something like that to other community groups, because I know there's small groups, there's neighborhood groups that really don't have a budget even.
All right. Yeah. Any other old new business? Okay, well, I guess we're close to being done. Any public comment? Hearing none. The date and time for the next meeting is May 12th. I guess we can adjourn. We don't need a motion to adjourn, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
thank.
curious, how the decision to become a virtual May meeting versus if we're allowed back in? I mean, right now we're closed until further notice, so my guess is that we'll probably have a virtual meeting, but just in case, if we are open, would we consider?
I mean, my opinion is to keep it virtual because, I mean, even state government, which is typically the last to do anything, we are working from home to the end of April. And once they start opening things up, it's going to be a gradual thing where it will be essential. And I don't think that we could ever say, like, we can, well, this may not be the preferred way to do it. I think that it would make sense to keep it on as virtual and do it as virtual, to not add to any of the traffic that may be happening if we are starting to interact with other humans again. But
Yeah, I
that's,
think that, that it was kind of one of the concerns at the directors meeting, and the question came up, when would people feel comfortable gathering again in groups of, more than 2 or 3? So that's going to impact programs that the library sponsors going forward.
And also, I'm sure there will be guidance from the government
Right.
regarding what is allowed. So we'll have to adhere to that.
And wouldn't we just post the location of the next meeting via the usual methods that we use for posting the meeting location? Do we need to make a decision on that right now? We just wait until we get closer and post it as we would normally post it.
Right, I just wanted to think about it, that's all. To broach the topic.
I don't know that we can predict what the situation is going to be. So,
May I ask a question about the finance meeting? And do we need to have half an hour between the start of the 2 meetings?
there was discussion of making it 15 minutes.
Okay, well, either way, if we could, on the meeting invitation, if we could say that the one meeting starts at one time and the second meeting starts at the other time, that would help be clarifying.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea.
Thank you.
Anybody else have comments? Okay. It's been nice to see everybody.
It was wonderful to see everybody.
You as well. Be well.
Yes.
All right. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Wear your
Bye.
mask.
Bye-bye.
Recording.